Life is tough at 40 tons. Be it the Sentinel, Clint, Assassin, or Cicada, the brutal and uncaring existence of math has left many battlemechs in want of more. In the case of the Sentinel, this rare workhorse mech has actually seen action in house armies, the Star League Defense Force, and even among the tech-savvy clans. Much like the real treasure in a millennial-written fantasy story, the real loot was the friends we made along the way. While it might be easy to dismiss the Sentinel as yet another troublesome 40-ton medium, it deserves a second look, and I think some respect. I hope you'll stick around and find out why. A sound like thunder came from the direction of the old factory. William and Lee turned as one and rushed over to the window. They watched as the entire building collapsed. Smoke and ash flew hundreds of meters into the sky. Emerald laser fire lanced into the rubble from the two Sentinels. Then one of the mechs raised its cannon and fired point blank into the mass of bricks and steel. An eerie quiet followed. A Smaller Sacrifice, Counterattack Battlecore Anthology, Volume 5, by Christian Granger. The late 2640s and early 2650s were tense years for the Star League. Intel reports showed military buildups among the periphery nations, which caused the House Lords considerable stress, and the new First Lord Michael Cameron was just getting his boots wet after taking the position in 2646. In public, each of the House Lords squabbled about the laws limiting the sizes of the militaries of the other houses while secretly building up their own forces. After additional reports of cargo ships packed with battlemechs and tanks flooded in from the Rimworld's Republic, the First Lord had to act. The estimation of Tadeo Amaris' standing army was to swell from 8 regiments of poorly maintained light mechs, would soon be 15 regiments armed with brand new equipment, was untenable. Though not illegal, what Amaris and the other leaders were doing was violating the spirit of the law and ramping up tensions. If conflict was to be avoided, action had to be taken. In order to prevent a second reunification war, the High Council and the First Lord met and agreed upon new limitations on state militaries outside of the SLDF. The Council Edict of 2650 allowed the Star League to pressure Amaris into publicly disbanding the new units in order to meet the new controls. Though Tadeo Amaris backed down and tensions seemed to relax, behind the scenes everyone continued to prepare for war. It was in this environment where Defiance Industries was directly working with House Steiner to produce new battlemechs that could give the Lyrans an edge in any future conflict. Though the original mission for the Sentinel program was to create a 40-ton battlemech which could act as a swift infantry support unit, the need to officially present it as a personal House Steiner security mech shifted that focus. As development continued into prototyping and testing, the Sentinel was being advertised as a useful guard for military installations and major landholding operations. The resulting STN-1S Sentinel was a significantly less dangerous beast than what would eventually grace the SLDF units down the road, but we'll get there when we get there. Constructed from a Defiant 5 chassis wrapped around a Pitband 240 Fusion engine, the Sentinel could hit a top speed of 97 km per hour. 6 tons of standard plate armor provided 96 points of protection, and 12 single heat sinks were installed to keep heat under control. A major selling point for the mech was the Starlink Benicia model comm system and the Targa 7 Vidcom 18 targeting and tracking system, which were the latest and greatest tech at the time of first manufacture. One underrated aspect of the Sentinel was the compromise in the arm construction. While the left arm could be devoted to a heavy weapon, the right arm's lower and hand actuators were preserved so that the mech could carry out physical tasks like lifting or moving objects. With so many mechs on the lighter end of the mass spectrum lacking hands, this had to be a selling point. All of this was in service to the very modest AC-2 autocannon set into the left arm, which was the mech's only long-range weaponry. It fed from a single ton of ammunition in the left torso. At close range, the most powerful weapon was a short-range missile rack in the right torso. Then finally, a small laser set into the right torso could add a little bit more oomph. While obviously there are some pretty serious issues with putting a 6-ton AC-2 into a 40-ton BattleMech, anytime you're dealing with a mech at the bottom end of a mech class bracket, it's important that tonnage expended on weaponry is spent well. With 7 tons of 10.5 total on a weapon that does 2 damage per shot, that is not a good example of well-spent mass. Thankfully, this first attempt at the Sentinel was not long for the world. Just 1 year later, the STN-3L variant was introduced, which incorporated some new tech. The 3L shaved off a half-ton of armor down to 5.5, and the extra heatsinks were popped out as well in order to make room for upgraded weaponry. The AC-2 was given the boot, thankfully, and in its place in the left arm was a KWI AC-5 Ultra autocannon. It could feed from 20 shots of ammunition stored in the left torso. The SRM launcher from the 1S's right torso was yanked in favor of a Streak SRM-2 launcher along with 1 ton of ammunition. Finally, the Defiance B-1A small laser survived the culling and continued to serve proudly in that right torso location. The new 3L Sentinel was nabbed up by Lyran buyers as well as the SLDF by the beginning of the 28th century. Over time, the Sentinel could be found across the militaries of the Great Houses. Overall, its reception was positive, though with the usual hiccups that newly designed battlemechs tended to have. Specifically, there were some reports that the Pitban 240 engines that Defiance was building under license had issues with their shielding. Once some Sentinels were pulled out of active service due to persistent overheating issues, some suggested there was a connection. How you overheat a Sentinel 3L that can only generate 7 heat in an Alpha Strike on the run would be worth knowing. Ultimately, it wasn't the engine or even the mech's heat sinks which were the issue, but the circulation system that channeled heat through the mech which required a fix. A repair patch was sent out to already produced Sentinels, and those produced afterward did not report any issues with heat. The biggest complaints about the Sentinel involved how quickly the Mechwarrior could burn through 20 shots of the Ultra AC-5 autocannon, and the curious and jarring vibration that was generated by firing the weapon. The arm assembly rattled so badly that the internal components of the arm began to fail at a much higher rate than expected. Though the issue could be repaired fairly quickly by a tech, it still presented a low risk of failure each time the autocannon was brought to bear on a target. While not able to put up big damage numbers, the Sentinel 3L could act as a swift harasser with the Ultra AC-5 in short battles. If used wisely and only closing to short range with lighter and softer targets, the Sentinel proved to be quite effective. The shockwave from the concussive blast of the Ultra autocannon shattered the delicate, almost artistic stalagmite-like structures nearest the Sentinel, shredding the last vestiges of such thoughts. Armor likewise exploded on the exterminator under the hail of depleted uranium slugs, the fragments also slicing into the salt-encrusted sediment formations nearest Andri. Weakened by the bursts of shrapnel, several, 2 almost as tall as the exterminator, wobbled, then toppled, knocking down additional columns. The explosion of harsh mineral particles into the air combined with a stiff breeze wafting a billowing wall of steam across his vision, cut off his visual senses as completely as a thrown light switch in a windowless room. Visions of Rebirth by Randall N. Bills. With the collapse of the Star League, the Sentinel's future was in doubt. While it had filled an important niche as a garrison battlemech that could reasonably hold up, it never saw demand or production numbers anywhere close to the other big-name designs. With the trials and tribulations of the First and Second Succession Wars, production at Defiance's lines on Hesperus were significantly curtailed. The loss of Streak and Ultra autocannon technology forced a downgraded version of our friend the Sentinel. The resulting STN-3K was an unhappy step backward toward the original first-run battlemech. The Ultra AC-5 was replaced by a Defiance Type J AC-5 autocannon, but also received a second ton of ammunition in the left torso. The Streak SRM-2 was swapped with a standard Holly SRM-2, and once again the Defiance B-1A small laser passed through unscathed. Good job, little buddy. We're rooting for you. On the bright side, the armor coverage ramped back up to 6 tons, so we're taking that as a win. Unfortunately, this is one of those Succession Wars variants which significantly suffers. Due to lack of demand and lukewarm performance, the Sentinel production line was eventually shut down and later repurposed in the 3020s to produce the Hatchetman. As the centuries passed, fewer and fewer Sentinels were fielded, and among the consciousness of the Inner Sphere, it was largely forgotten. However, the story of the Sentinel was not over. The SLDF took their share with them into the periphery, and though it was recorded on both sides of Operation Klondike, I was unable to find any specific stories. Almost every time the Sentinel is mentioned in the novels, it's as a target of the main or secondary characters. Storyline fodder, basically. There was an incident on the planet Brim in 2835 where the Snow Ravens clashed with the Ghost Bears over possession of an Eagle aerospace fighter production line where the Sentinel had a small part to play. With the binary of clan warriors on each side clashing in what looked like an impending Ghost Bear victory, a bear warrior named Melissa Harlow fired her Shogun's PPC into the cockpit of a Raven Sentinel. This led to the Ravens triggering a free-for-all. The Raven's star captain, Alistair, used his 90-ton pulverizer in a series of devastating physical attacks on Harlow's Shogun, leaving much of the bear's mech in pieces on the ground and its cockpit smashed. Things didn't quite work out well for the Mechwarrior of the Shogun, or the Sentinel for that matter. The clans would continue to use their remaining Sentinels, and even after Operation Revival, the mech was spotted among second line and garrison clan units. It's unclear if those were brought with the clan Tumans from clan space or obtained from within the Inner Sphere as spoils of war. Harri was fourth in line as they proceeded into the mech bay, with no time to pause and admire the mech he'd be piloting. The Sentinel had been painted with the jagged black and white striping used for urban warfare. Black and white were also the Able Ace's unit colors, which Harri thought was good luck. An ace of spades was painted on the Sentinel's left shoulder. Armed with only an ultra autocannon, a small laser, and a small short-range missile pack, the Sentinel was a light mech that depended more on dodging shots than armored protection. Harri climbed up the gantry to the cockpit and climbed in, sealing the hatch behind him. It seemed smaller than the simulator cockpit, much smaller. He tried to ignore the confined feeling, but it was hard. Born and raised in the countryside around Thorpe, he had spent much of his life out of doors and in the open. Now his whole world was only as wide as he could reach out and touch with his fingers. By Blood Betrayed, by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Returning to the warm embrace of the Inner Sphere, the Sentinel would receive new life thanks to the shenanigans of Comstar's reveal that they were sitting on what scientists would refer to as a metric buttload of Star League battlemechs. Others showed up in the Draconis Combine's infamous Ghost Regiments, also thanks to Comstar, most sporting the downgraded 3K build with some minor sub-variants that swap out the autocannon for a large laser or PPC. I do want to briefly touch upon the STN 3KB refit because it's a good demonstration of what could be. The only structural change outside of the weaponry for the 3KB was cramming 3 additional heatsinks into the mech. These were in service to the particle projection cannon, which replaced the autocannon in the left arm. The SRM-2 and small laser went untouched. Though uncommon, the 3KB demonstrates how even one weapon swap can make a big difference in the overall productivity of the design. While the PPC did more firmly push the mech into a skirmisher role that wanted to avoid close combat, for only 3.2 million C-bills at 823 battle value, the Sentinel 3KB is a solid choice. During the War of 3039, some Sentinels from the Comstar stockpile were spotted with the original antique but advanced Ultra AC-5 autocannons, which was pretty astounding for the year. The rediscovery of Star League technologies ushered in the return of the STN-3L model with the Ultra AC-5 autocannon, Streak SRM-2, and the always reliable small laser. It was the 3L which saw action on Tukayyid as a skirmisher and harassing unit that could hit an advancing clan force and quickly run away before a response could be leveled. 3035 saw another refit of the Sentinel and it was spotted in the Free Worlds League, retained the Ultra AC-5 but carried a standard SRM-2 with 1 ton of ammunition. The techs yanked the small laser, that's too bad, in favor of a standard medium laser with a total of just 5.5 tons of standard plate armor. While not a huge change, the 3M would end up being modded later by the Combine, so we have to mention it here or I'll get angry comments from Free World Leaguers. And then something rocked against her mech, throwing her in her seat with a curse. An alarm chimed as a chunk of her right torso armor dented under a stream of autocannon shells. She snarled as she spun her torso, bringing her guns to bear on her attacker, and saw a loping Sentinel accelerate to match her turning speed. Sneaky little bastard. Unfortunately for them, her Gauss rifles weren't fixed facing. Her right arm moved out as well and brought the medium mech into her sight. With a squeeze of the trigger, it was the Sentinel's turn to stagger as its front armor shattered. In the end, Shrapnel number 20 by Łukasz Ferminiak. The next technological leap forward for the Sentinel wouldn't take place until 3063 with the introduction of the STN-4D model. Little expense was spared in order to save on mass and improve the mech in most areas. Starting with endosteel, mass was freed up to push the armor coverage up to 7 tons of ferrofibrous, which was just 1 ton shy of the max for a 40-ton battlemech. The 10 single heat sinks were upgraded to the double-strength variety before spending the remaining mass on more dangerous things. Once again, the Sentinel was given an autocannon. This time, it was the dangerous rotary AC-5 along with 2 tons of case-protected ammunition. Spending almost 90% of your build on a single powerful weapon was a gamble, but clearly the engineers felt the ability to pour fire onto a target when the time was right was worth it. The only other addition to the 4D was an ER medium laser set into the right torso, which was handy to have as the RAC-5 can chew through 2 tons of ammunition like a certain teenager in this house can gnaw through a package of Oreos in an afternoon. The value of the 4D likely boils down to your feelings about the rotary autocannon. As a demonstration of that tech in action, you could do worse than a nimble Sentinel 4D. According to the available info, it was most likely spotted among the forces of the Federated Suns. Over on the other side of the border, the Draconis Combine fielded their own variant of the Sentinel, designated the STN-C, which took the 3035M variant and yanked the medium laser in favor of a C3 slave computer. It was first spotted in 3065, creating the opportunity for some Sentinel-on-Sentinel action on the combined FedSuns border. He watched as the Sentinel from his side blasted at the Comstar Bombardier, autocannon rounds stitching along the front torso and cockpit of the gray-white Comguard mech. The Bombardier turned and its massive torso bay doors opened, revealing the barrage of missiles it carried. 40 long-range missiles hissed from the Bombardier and enveloped the Sentinel in a ball of smoke and orange explosions. It was there, somewhere in the middle of that impact zone, though it was barely operational. He had to admit the reservists were hanging tight. The Loyal Sun, Killzone Battlecore Anthology Volume 7 by Blaine Lee Pardoe. In 3070, the Word of Blake decided to take a crack at upgrading the Sentinel design with the STN-5WB. Structural changes included a swap over to a light fusion engine along with 6.5 tons of standard plate armor. 10 double heatsinks were no surprise, and the movement speed remained untouched. The designers took a slightly different route with the left arm and installed 2 light AC-5 autocannons which could feed from a central shared single ton of case-protected ammunition in the left torso. The addition of 3 ER medium lasers, split 1 in each side torso and the third in the center, provided bolstering fire in the mid and short range. While the twin light AC-5s aren't a terrible option as a replacement for the UAC-5, having only a single ton of ammunition made for a very brief window of usefulness before a significant drop in DPS. If I were in charge, I'd sacrifice one of those ER medium lasers for a second ton of ammunition. With 20 shots per autocannon instead of 10, your mech will likely not outlive your ammunition. The most recent Sentinel to grace the timeline arrived thanks to Defiance taking a gander at the collection of variants over the years and picking what worked along with adding some of their own charm. The STN-6S that stomped off the assembly lines in 3135 benefited from an extra light gyro as well as a clan-spec extra light engine, buying 7 tons of mass for other fun. 10 double heatsinks were no surprise, and the 6.5 tons of standard plate armor were par for the course. With all the other bits in place, the advanced hardware provided 21 tons of mass for weapons and equipment. That's more than half of the mech's overall mass, which is pretty impressive. The Ultra AC-5 autocannon made its return to the mech's left arm, though this time the 1 ton of ammunition received Case 2 in the left torso. 2 Thunderbolt 5 missile launchers were set into the right torso and each fed from 2 tons of ammunition in the Case 2 protected right torso. Finally, as a little treat, a clan-spec ER medium laser was installed into the right torso. With no heat generation concerns, the Sentinel 6S can harass at distance using all of its weapons. When the ammo bins inevitably run dry, it still has the get up and go to run back to friendly turf. The major downside for the design is that some may look at that XL gyro and XL engine and figure it isn't worth the cost to put a total of 27 possible Alpha Strike damage into the field. In fact, Defiance picked up intel that some of their Sentinel 6S buyers were immediately taking their brand new BattleMech apart and putting the clan spec XL engine into other heavier BattleMechs, like the Rifleman or Awesome. If I were a Defiance account executive, I might be looking at that and wondering why the company shouldn't just sell the XL engines without worrying about the rest of the BattleMech. Oh well. The Sentinel 6S is a solid if slightly fragile machine. So long as it stays out of the fray and avoids being pinned down by heavier enemies, it could put on a good show until the ammunition runs out. While not a superstar use of its available mass, the Sentinel 6S is probably a riot to pilot. The Wolfhound's large laser capitalized on the damage done to the Sentinel's left arm and autocannon. Under the coherent light's hellish caress, the last of the armor vaporized and the autocannon flashed to a molten white heat before it melted clean away. The mech, unbalanced by the loss of the limb, staggered but managed to stay upright. The Comstar pilot proved himself game by firing back. 2 SRMs corkscrewed out of the Sentinel's chest and ripped armor from the right side of Grinner's torso. The small laser mounted just below the missile launcher shot a beam that bubbled paint and armor off the left side of the Wolfhound's broad chest, but neither attack did any real damage or anything to slow Phelan's charge. Lost Destiny, Blood of Kerensky Trilogy by Michael A. Stackpole. Looking at the Sentinel 6S, I can't help but think I can do a little bit better. For the totally unofficial and non-canon Sentinel 6MF, I think I can turn a few more heads and avoid the techs ripping out the engine for a rifleman. Ouch. For the purposes of brevity, all of my changes to the already hybrid design are inner sphere spec unless specifically noted. Starting with the hardware, I didn't mess with the XL engine or gyro, but I did take a second look at the armor, which I think needed some attention in order to make the mech attractive for more than just its fancy engine. The Sentinel 6MF carries 7.5 tons of reflective armor, which can be a saving grace for swift-moving lighter battlemechs in the age of pulse lasers and targeting computers. For those who could use the refresher, the reflective armor reduces incoming damage from energy weapons and reduces the heat-causing effects of applicable weapons by half. This comes at the cost of taking increased damage from area effect weapons, falls, and physical attacks. It's a risky play, but we're already talking about a mech with an XL engine and XL gyro. In for a penny and in for a pound. The only other structural change was the addition of an 11th double heatsink to help keep this gem humming along. The goal for the weapons loadout was to build a swift mover which could run into a fight, hit a target hard, and then skedaddle before taking too much return fire. The snub-nosed PPC in the left arm is technically the mech's heavy hitter weapon. With its very favorable range bracketing accuracy, we're already off to a good start. At nearly the same point where the PPC is in short range, the 2 medium-range missile 10 launchers set into the right torso hit their medium-range bracket as well. Each launcher has its own ton of ammunition protected by Case 2. To help offset the risk of the reflective armor, an anti-missile system sits in the left torso along with 1 ton of ammunition. It's joined in that same side by a clan spec medium pulse laser, which is rarely ever a poor addition. The MPL also hits medium range at about the same place as the other weaponry, reinforcing that 7-9 hex range as the mech's sweet spot. Finally, an emotional support ER small laser was installed into the open head critical, finishing off what I think is a pretty fun ambusher. The potential total damage at the ideal range is 37, which isn't too bad with what we're working with. I'm curious what you think. Is the STN 6MF worth leaving the engine in place, or is it just not quite good enough? If you'd like to try it yourself, I've included the free PDF record sheet and Alpha Strike card down in the video notes below. If you take it for a cruise, please let me know how it does. So why do we love the Sentinel? This one is tough because it's a mech that has been largely forgotten. While it never fully went extinct throughout the Succession Wars, it just wasn't produced enough to remain relevant in an already tough 40-ton niche. Building a mech like this around an autocannon borrows all of the problems from that class of weaponry, and the variants that seem to be the most effective end up abandoning the autocannon entirely. It would be nice to see the Sentinel show up in another CGL-produced mech box soon, as the glow-up with the new art is very good. It's a radically positive shift in comparison to the Humpty Dumpty cast metal sculpt, which really didn't do the mech any favors. The newest variant is quite effective, and it could be fun if used in the right circumstances. It's really tough to be a 40-ton battle mech, but the Sentinel is doing its best. That has to be worth something. What do you think about the Sentinel? Is it a mech you're fond of, or has it been a long time since you've seen it? Is there a variant that you think is the mech in its ideal form? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, or even leave a comment. All of these things make the YouTube algorithm happy. Now, if you want to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi is ideal, and the link is in the video notes. Though YouTube channel memberships are still a thing, it's nice not to have to rely entirely on Google's good graces moving forward. No matter what, it's appreciated. Without strong community support, none of this would be possible. If you'd like to join the nonsense and even share off your own painted battle mechs, join our Discord server where people get a heads up on what's coming up next week and have a chance to chat about all things BattleTech. The link for the Discord is in the video notes below. With that, I'll say thanks again. Please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.